Some patterns are hard to see while you're inside them, especially when you've spent years trying to make sense of things that never fully made sense. Trying to keep the peace, trying to understand, trying to figure out why certain situations leave you questioning yourself. This channel is about helping people navigate difficult people, broken systems, and hidden patterns without losing themselves in the process. No filters, no performance, just the truth. Why you feel crazy around certain people. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely confused? Not because you didn't understand what was said, but because somehow, by the end of it, you no longer trusted your own understanding. You knew what happened. You were there. You heard the words. You remember the events. And yet, after talking to that person, you find yourself replaying everything. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe you're being unfair. And that's the part that bothers you. Not the disagreement, not the conflict, the confusion. Because you're usually a reasonable person. You don't normally second guess reality. You don't normally spend hours trying to decode one conversation. But around certain people, it happens over and over again. And eventually, you start asking a dangerous question. What's wrong with me? I ask myself that question more times than I can count. And I was being a reasonable person, a functioning person. Which made it worse. The answer may be simpler than you think. And it has less to do with you than you've been led to believe. Most people assume feeling crazy means something is wrong with them. But often, what you're feeling isn't craziness. It's disorientation. There's a difference. When communication is healthy, even difficult conversations eventually create clarity. Now, you may not agree, you may not like the outcome, but you understand what happened. With certain people, the opposite happens. The more you talk, the less clear things become. Simple questions become complicated. Simple events become debates. Simple boundaries become accusations. Nothing ever seems to stay where it started. The conversation keeps moving. The target keeps moving. The explanation keeps changing. And because you're trying to be fair, you keep following it. You keep trying to understand. You keep trying to resolve it. You keep trying to make sense of it. What feels like craziness is often the result of spending too much time inside a situation that never settles. Your mind is trying to organize something that refuses to stay organized. And that creates exhaustion. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Imagine someone leaves a meeting with a doctor, a caseworker, a supervisor, someone who holds authority over something that matters to them. They're tired, maybe a little frustrated. They mention something that happened during that meeting. A simple observation. Nothing dramatic. The person they come home to immediately takes offense. Not because anything offensive was said, but because they interpreted it that way. So now, the first person explains, I wasn't criticizing you. I was talking about what happened. I think you're misunderstanding me. Seems reasonable. But instead of creating clarity, the explanation creates another problem. Now, the issue isn't what was originally said. Now, it's the explanation. Why did you explain it that way? Why did you use that tone? Why are you getting defensive? So the person explains again. And again. And again. An hour later, they aren't even talking about the original issue anymore. Now, they're busy defending their character, their intentions, their memory, their motives. They're trying to prove they aren't the person they've suddenly been accused of being. Eventually, the conversation ends. But it doesn't feel finished. It feels unfinished. unclear, heavy. And later that night, they replay it. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I could have explained it better. Maybe I handled it wrong. Then the next day, they're still thinking about it. Not because the issue was important, but because the confusion never resolved. And over time, that becomes normal. Not the conflict, the confusion itself. That tends to wear people down. Here's the insight most people miss. The goal of a healthy conversation is understanding. However, the goal of an unhealthy dynamic is often movement. Constant movement. The issue changes. The focus changes. The standard changes. The story changes. And because you're operating in good faith, you assume if you just stay engaged long enough, you'll eventually reach clarity. But clarity was never the thing being pursued. That's why it feels impossible to reach. The problem isn't that you're incapable of understanding. The problem is that you're trying to solve something that keeps changing shape. Imagine trying to hit a target while someone moves it every time you get close. Eventually, you'd start questioning yourself. Not because you're failing, because the game itself is unstable. That's what happens around certain people. You begin treating instability as if it's a puzzle. You assume there's a solution hidden somewhere. A perfect explanation. A perfect response. Perfect insight. But sometimes the revelation isn't finding the answer. It's realizing why no answer ever seems to work. Because remember, the confusion isn't accidental. It's built into the pattern. And once you see that, something shifts. You stop chasing clarity from people who consistently create confusion. You stop treating every accusation like a mystery that must be solved. You stop assuming every misunderstanding is your responsibility to fix. And something remarkable happens. Your mind gets quieter. Not because everything became perfect, but because you stopped carrying what never belonged to you. You stop asking, why do I feel crazy? And start asking, what keeps happening here? That's a very different question. And it often leads to a very different answer. If any part of this felt familiar, don't rush past it. Pay attention to the patterns, not just the moments. Moments can be confusing. Patterns tell the truth. If you're trying to make sense of difficult people, broken systems, and the hidden patterns behind them, start by paying attention to what repeats. And if you want a simple framework for recognizing these patterns and protecting your peace, you can download the free System versus Self starter guide below. Until next time, stay aware, stay grounded, and don't lose yourself in the process.